If you often refer to yourself as a perfectionist, or you have often been told that you're too hard on yourself, then keep watching because this video is for you. We are going to be talking about how to rewire the brain in order to love ourselves better. My name is Tessa and I'm glad that you're here because we talk all about the things that make us happy, healthy, and wealthy. So let's get into it. If we want to learn to love ourselves more, we have to figure out where we're starting from. And yes, this is the same first step that I gave in my last video on building wealth, which if you haven't checked out, you should right now. But it is so true that in any area of life, if we are trying to move forward, we have to figure out where we're at today. And the way that we're going to do that with learning to love ourselves is recognizing the bad thoughts and where they come from. When I first started trying to do this, it did not go well. And I think in part because the first few days, I kind of got up on my high horse and I was like,
I don't have any bad thoughts, and the ones that I do happen to be justified.
And then a couple days later, a bad thought popped into my head and I realized, why did I just think that? When traditionally I would have just accepted it as the truth. And that made me realize two things. First of all, I do have bad thoughts that I'm not even recognizing that I have. And second of all, it's really hard to recognize that you're having these bad thoughts because we're so used to having them that they just come as second nature and we just accept them as the truth, when in reality, they're lies that we're telling ourselves. But I want to challenge you to try to do this, and when you do, don't convince yourself that you're just already perfect like I did if it's hard for you to recognize these thoughts when they come in. It will probably take a few days of you being really cautious of the different thoughts that pop into your head daily before you finally recognize the first bad thought. But don't stop there. We're just getting started when we realize that we're having negative thoughts about ourselves. I want you to keep paying attention and I want you to look around yourself. Realize, where am I? Who am I with? What just happened? What's about to happen? What am I wearing? What did I eat? Have I drank water? Etc. And the reason that we want to do that is because we want to figure out not just what these bad thoughts are that we're having, but what's triggering them so that we can try to prevent them in the future. For example, a trigger that I have is actually getting compliments, and I know that sounds like super backwards, but I am like the queen of, are you just saying that to be nice? Because I don't believe a single thing that people tell me, especially if it's something that I have been previously insecure about. If I get a compliment on it, I start to think the only reason that this person thought to compliment me on this was because it stuck out so much and was so awkward and horrible that they just pitied me. So they felt like they had to give me a compliment so that they didn't have to feel bad that I felt bad about how horrible and insecure this thing was making me feel. It's like this whole mental gymnastics. And it's like, there's no way that going through that process and those thoughts is easier than just accepting the compliment. And yet I do it so easily that I don't even realize I'm doing it, and it's because I've built up the muscle and the skill of rejecting every compliment that I get. For example, I was pretty nervous to start this YouTube channel. As I'm sure you understand, we're all scared of being cringe online. And so that was my main insecurity when I started posting. But then I was getting all this really positive feedback from my friends saying, oh, your voice sounded so natural, or you talk so fluently on the camera, like I could never do that. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, so you hate me, is what you're trying to say. You never want to watch another one of my videos. You think my voice is horrible and you watch on mute. And what?
Huh?
That's crazy. That's delusional thinking, and yet I did it so seamlessly. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I had to catch myself and I had to rewire my brain to just accepting the compliment. Actually, now that I say this out loud, I think that my insecurity comes from that scene in Mean Girls, where Regina George is like,
oh my God, I love your skirt. Where did you get it?
It was my mom's in the 80s.
Vintage. So adorable.
I think that scene rewired my brain into rejecting every compliment and taking it as an insult. I am no longer Tessa, did you just say that to be nice, Trocarico. I am Tessa, thank you, Trocargo, when I get compliments. But maybe your triggers are different from mine. I'm sure they are. We're all unique people. And maybe you realize that you start getting really hard on yourself when you're tired, or you're hungry, or when you're with certain people. And it's important to recognize these triggers because we want to be able to prevent them, not necessarily stop them. You can't always. For example, I don't want to stop getting compliments. I just want to prevent myself from thinking bad thoughts when I do, which is now something that I can be cautious of because I'm aware that it happens. Can you imagine if I was just like,
recognize why you're having bad thoughts and then stop?
done, video over? No, that's not realistic. And if you're wondering why what I said previously is true about why it's so easy to have these negative thoughts and not even realize it, let me tell you about a little trick that my mom taught me growing up. And you can trust her because she's Little Miss PhD in child and family psychology, so she knows what she's talking about. But what she taught me is that these are your brain cells. And every time that you have a bad thought, you are building a bridge from one brain cell to another for these bad thoughts to travel from. And the more bad thoughts you have, the more bridges get built and the stronger those bridges become. So one bad thought, two bad thoughts, 3, 4, on, and pretty soon, next time you have a bad thought, it's just gonna be able to go zoom, 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 zoom throughout your whole brain without you even realizing it. And it's just so easy for those bad thoughts to travel across your brain because the bridges have already been built. So what can we do about it? We have to build good thoughts bridges. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it really works. Every time we have a bad thought, we need to undo it and build a good thought by thinking 3 compliments. 3, not 1, not 2, 3 compliments about yourself, 3 good thoughts that you can give to undo the bad one. And there's 2 tips with this. First of all, you don't even have to believe it. We are building the bridge. Our good thoughts aren't traveling across those bridges yet. So if you feel like you're just saying baloney and it doesn't even make sense, but it's a positive thought about yourself, it still counts. We haven't built up the muscle of believing the good thoughts like we have built up the muscle of believing the bad ones. So it might feel weird right now, but it's still important that you tell yourself these good thoughts even if you don't believe them. And 2, you can't undo them with a bad thought immediately afterward or it doesn't count, okay? So you can't be like, I'm so beautiful.
Not really, lol, I'm the ugliest person ever.
Like that doesn't count. You just gave yourself another bad thought, which means your bridges are really strong, which is a good thing because that means that your good thought bridges can be really strong too. You just have to get there. So what I want everybody to practice right now is giving yourself a good thought, building one of those bridges, and I want you to comment a compliment about yourself down below. Even if you don't believe it, it's okay, still work on it. While we all have different triggers for our bad thoughts, something that I think is pretty universal is that comparing ourselves can make us feel pretty bad. I'm sure we've all heard
Comparison is the thief of joy.
And while that's kind of cheesy, it's absolutely true. But if you're anything like me, I'm a pretty confident person already. I don't often look at others and wish I had what they had because I am so focused on my own goals and developing myself into the person that I want to be. But the trick that I fall into is I see myself in the future of where I want to be, and I think, why am I not there yet? Oh yeah, it's because I suck. Which is like obviously not the thoughts that I want to be giving myself, and it's not effective in getting myself to my goals. So what can we do about it? Something that I have been really benefiting from lately is turning my goals from external metrics of success to focusing on my internal motivations for starting a project or accomplishing something that I wanted. And what that looks like is going from tangible and measurable outcomes that people can approve or disapprove of into internal mindset-oriented growth that only I'm aware of. And I know that sounds really like wishy-washy, and I don't blame you for thinking that I sound like a hippie, but I can give you a pretty concrete example of this. Last year, I started watching videos on homesteading and gardening, and I immediately fell in love with it, and I was like, yes, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to become a homesteader. So, of course, you know, I had to do the whole shebang. I got the planters, the soil, the plants, the watering can, the shovels. I did it all because I thought, well, what's the point of doing this if I'm not going to do it right and well? And I also got 33 plants from my first garden. Do you realize how many that is and how difficult that is to maintain? But I thought I need a bountiful and abundant harvest if I'm gonna do this, or else there's no point in doing it. And then guess what happened? My strawberries died immediately, my cucumbers had fungus, and my zucchinis grew in shapes that were their own issue. So I realized pretty quickly I don't really have a green thumb, and I was like so butthurt about it, and I was like, this is horrible, I can't be a gardener, like what am I gonna do with my life, I'm such a failure, but then I realized I didn't necessarily start the garden to become some mega successful homesteader that lives off the land and donates my extra produce at farmers markets, but I started it because I wanted some hobbies that slowed me down, and I wanted to get back in touch with nature after being on technology so much. And I absolutely accomplished that last spring with my garden. I learned so much about the 33 different plants. Even if I didn't learn enough to keep them alive, I still learned patience in helping them grow, and I really benefited from spending time outside in the garden rather than inside on technology. So that's one way that I have kind of shifted my focus and my intentions from external metrics of success to internal measures of growth that only I can judge, and that's something that I can be proud of. Speaking of being proud, something else that is super important to mention in this section is if you're like me and you see yourself in the future of where you want to be and you're not there yet and you're pretty mad about it, which is very relatable, I want you to thank yourself for having the courage to start. Because it's the hardest step, and it's the scariest step, and it's the most frustrating step, but because you got started, you are one step closer to where you want to be, and it's inevitable that you're going to have to learn. Anytime you start something new, anytime you want to develop into a new kind of person, you're going to have to learn about that skill or that kind of lifestyle in order to achieve it, and learning is frustrating, I get it. And it's tiring, it's time consuming, and you get no rewards from it. But I want you to create an internal reward by recognizing that you did start. You're doing the inevitable, you're getting through the hardest part, so that when you're ready to become that person, it's going to be loads easier than it would be if you started then. So thank yourself for being brave enough to get started, even if you're not hitting the goals that you want to be hitting yet. And then in addition to thanking ourselves, I also want you to create the habit of celebrating your wins. And I know that sounds pretty basic, but it's actually kind of hard, and here's why. If you're anything like me, then you've probably had this conversation with yourself. You set a goal, and then you achieve it. And you think, well, if I could do it, then it must have not been that hard and not really that impressive either. So I guess it was a bad goal to begin with. Let me set a higher one. And then you set a higher one, and then you achieve it, and the same thing happens. You think, well, if I did it, then it must not have been that hard, it must have been pretty easy, and so it was a bad goal. Let me set an even higher one. And it's a vicious cycle that you go through, and the only way to end it is what it seems to me is like by burning out, because you just can never be proud of yourself for what you are accomplishing. I have another YouTube related example if you're confused on what I mean. When I posted my first video, I thought, how cool will it be when I hit triple digits of views? When I have 100 views, that's when I'll know I will have made it as a YouTuber, and that's my only goal, and I will be so proud of that. And then guess what? I hit 100 views in less than 24 hours. And as soon as it happened, I was like, well, that was a stupid goal. Like, I guess anybody could do it. It wasn't that hard, and I guess I need to shoot higher next time. So then I started thinking, well, now I need 1,000 views on my videos, and I'm not going to be proud of myself until I have 1,000 views, because 100 views doesn't really mean anything. No! Obviously, just the day before I had 100 views, it was like the coolest thing ever to me, and it was like the one thing I wanted and my personal metric of success. So as soon as I hit it, I should have celebrated that, not just immediately looked toward the next big goal. And so something that I want you to try to do is write down your goals as you come up with them. And I know a lot of YouTubers and other, leadership inspired people will tell you to write down your goals, to try to speak them into existence and hold yourself accountable, and for whatever reasons, but we're not writing them down for those reasons. We're writing them down to remember them, to recognize there was a time in my life when this was what I wanted and I've accomplished it. And take a moment to celebrate that before you make your next goal, so that you can be proud of yourself and practice giving yourself good thoughts rather than just chasing the next metric. So overall, if we can change our intentions and focus on the growth rather than the accomplishment, and then celebrate our wins along the way throughout that growth journey, we will have a lot more reasons to be proud of ourselves and a lot more good thoughts to have, which will inevitably build up our good thought bridges, making good thoughts easier to have even when we don't realize we're having them, and will make bad thoughts less common. If you want to hear more ideas like this, I would really encourage you to subscribe, because on this channel we talk all about the things that make us happy, healthy, and wealthy. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye!